And then there's the other balancing act that happens sort of off the mats, where you're like, okay, what is it that what do my students need right now? What's the direction that I need to take the kids class in? What do the adults need most? And we're just now starting to, introduce sort of this, instead of just a drilling class on Tuesdays and Fridays, we're starting to do the sort of instructor-led drilling classes, so that we can backfill, because, Coach Vaji's an amazing coach.
That's Garrett Beck. Garrett Vagi, Vagi Beck.
Yeah, I mean, like from a technical level, he knows so many details about every single thing that he instructs.
Yeah, he's a great great instructor, by the way.
And so, but the delta there is like, when I teach something to a kids class, I teach like a knee cut pass. I break it down into these 4 steps, and these are the 4 steps. The kids do the 4 steps. They learn a knee cut pass. We move on. Vaji, because he can teach me a knee cut pass, something that I've been doing for the last 12 years. And I'm like, oh, that's a detail that I didn't know.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, so there's this many different points and, or variations, or do this differently or move this way. So you can spend a lot of time on that. But for the brand new person, so our class, we have general attendance classes. So basically everybody whites to black belts come in and we're all in the same class. And so Vaji's doing a really good job of sort of straddling the line to give instruction that's meaningful for, the entire disparate skill levels that we have in the class.
Yeah.
So that when I'm there, I'm like, oh, I learned something. When a brand new white belt's there and he's like, oh, I learned a lot of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's sometimes drilling down that deep, it gets, you start to do like a little bit of a paralysis by analysis. So if a brand new person's trying to do this knee cut pass, the 12-step version that they just learned, they may spend more time trying to get, one detail right that isn't as important against somebody that's at their skill level.
Right.
Right. If they did the 3-step version, they may actually be more successful.
And they feel like they can actually use it in free rolling.
Right. And so what we want to do is just sort of break it down and backfill, like, so that everybody, the way I think of jiu-jitsu is I think it was almost like a map. And all of the, on this map, there are locations, those locations being positions. So you can think it's like, okay, guard town, top side control, mount, mount top and bottom, side control, top and bottom, guard, top and bottom, a neutral position. And then you can break it down into there's, suburbs of guard that are all the different types of guards. But if you think of these as just locations on a map, then you can start to say, okay, well, how do I get from one place to another place? And these are the roads. And there's multiple ways to get from top guard to, to side control or to mount. And so you can kind of create this map flow chart. And so I want, in a relatively quick way for a person that signs up or starts training, because when you get into a spot and you don't know any moves from that spot, you're just completely lost.
Yeah, you're stuck.
And you're just like, well, this sucks.
Yeah,
like,
I don't have a way forward. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's like, maybe it's like, so if let's say you come in and you learn some guard passes, and let's say you're fortunate enough to hit a guard pass on somebody else who's pretty brand new, and now you get to side control, and you're like, well, this is cool. Now what? Do I just go back into guard and start over again?
Pretty much. And that's what a lot of people do, that when they don't know white belts, when they don't know what they're doing, they stay there, they try to hold the position long, and then they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to go back to somewhere I feel comfortable, which usually is like back in somebody's car.
Yeah. So now, so I want to work so that basically, on a high level, no matter where you are, you at least have an agenda or a goal from every position.
So like, for instance, we can see here, this is Hickson Gracie's flow chart. And this is just one of the many flow charts online, but you can see like, okay, from mount, right? There's different places you can go. I get in headlock, mount, knee on chest, side mount to knee on belly. Right, knee on belly to mount to a submission. And this is like this is a very broad, general one. I don't know if they have a.
Yeah, no, but if you go back up to that and just show it for a little bit, like each of these arrows is, this represents a ton of different stuff. So you have, mount goes into guard, or I'm trying to find one. open guard to a submission. That there's 30 moves there. That arrow represents 30 different things that a person can do. So a lot of these things, there's a lot of different stuff. And so I want a person that finds himself, if I'm in bottom, knee on stomach, I want to know, what am I supposed to do? What am I not supposed to do? And, so we got to start, just working through that, because, that's the honestly one of the most frustrating things about starting jiu-jitsu. And the longer that you are in jiu-jitsu, the less you remember the struggles that you had when you began. But it's really frustrating not knowing what you're going to do. And then it's, there's also a frustration that is experienced by the upper belts that roll with the new guys, because they're like, this new guy's really strong, but he always does the same thing when he's in this position. He's like, well, he's doing that same thing because he hasn't learned anything else. So, like, let's give him a break. Or, maybe that's a time where you step aside and say, hey, in this position right now, you're extending your arms. You're just trying to bench press me off of you. That's going to set you up for arm bars. Okay, maybe I just arm barred you. This is why. Instead of trying to do that, this is what you should be trying to do. You should work in this direction.
So let me ask you this then. This is really good stuff, by the way, guys. For anybody who starts jiu-jitsu, looking at these flow charts, because the flow charts, again, goes back to that map. I mean, there's a reason why engineers and very, very smart people, intelligent people, analytical people do really well in jiu-jitsu, because they look at these recipes here and they follow the recipes. They learn about all the different things, and little by little. But what do you as an instructor, what do you think a white belt should do? That they want to not be lost anymore, besides going to class and drilling, besides that all that stuff, right? Is there homework that they should be doing? And if so, what kind of homework should you be doing?
So, a couple different things that you can do, right? Like situational sparring's huge, right? Like, so if you take, so right now we have a huge box, the one that we were just looking at a second ago. There's a huge box that, at a high level encapsulates almost the entirety of jiu-jitsu, right? It's, if you're a brand new person, this is too much. This is too much stuff to do. That what you have to focus on is specific positions, and make those positions be something that you've done before, right? So let's say that last week we did a lot of half guard. So this week it's like, okay, I want to actually start practicing what I actually know.
Right.
So I want to be in half guard. Now maybe you get out of half guard pretty quick. If you're at an open mat, you can discuss with your partner, say, hey, I'd like to do some situational sparring where I just work my half guard. You know what I mean? And so then you can do the situational sparring where you improve there, but then you make it, you break it down into an even more microscopic level of the flow chart we were looking at, where it's like, okay, so I know that from getting from top open guard to side control is knee cut pass. But now I'm going to break the knee cut pass down into all of the different turns on the roads that I need to make to get there. One of those turns being, I need to block the hip and make sure that my arm doesn't cross the middle line. Maybe against a certain opponent that you've rolled with several times, you get arm drag from a position like this. So a victory is, don't get arm drag this time. Keep your arm in a, so make it about the little victories. If you start having less wrong turns in your path from one to the other, that's the victory. It's not about like, well, did I tap out? Did I lose? Did I? If you think about it as losing, like, you're going up against people that have been doing this for a lot longer than you. If you start playing, chess with a grandmaster chess player, you're going to get beat.
Mm.
But maybe over time, you sort of learn some of the tendencies of the other person and you survive a little bit longer, or you make a good move.
Right. Exactly.
And so that's what needs to happen.
So like looking at this chart right here, right? This is one of the charts I looked at when, after about a couple months into training with you guys. And I looked at this chart because I'm trying to figure out, man, I'm getting caught in a lot of stuff, but I don't even know what I'm getting caught in, rolling with these upper belt guys. But I realized that, I need to get smarter. I need to actually know what I'm getting caught in. Like that's the sort of the white belt battle, is not getting caught, as opposed to like getting a really cool move on somebody and submitting them. It's like, well, let's just focus on not getting caught. So like if I'm in somebody's open guard, I would get caught and, they would turn it into spider guard. Next thing you know, triangle choke. And I would get triangle choked all the time. And then it was like, all right, I better learn I better block this part off. Because if I block
Right.
this part off, then I'm blocking a lot of this other stuff off too. And then I start training how not to get triangle choked. And now that's blocked off. Cool. And once again, back to those small wins that you're talking about. Whoops. Those small wins that you're talking about. Jiu-jitsu is not, you're not going to get good at it. You're not going to be great at jiu-jitsu in a year or so. You know what I mean? Jiu-jitsu is, it's almost like your mentality has to be, this is a life thing. And I'm not worried about my blue belt. I'm not worried about the next belt. I'm not worried about submitting this guy so much as I am just worried about my own. It's like your own self. Did I get better? 1% better, like the guys that have other fighters have come on here and trainers. They say, are you 1% better today than you were yesterday?
Right.
And that's frustrating for people with that want that instant gratification. That instant gratification doesn't happen in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, no, jiu-jitsu it's sophisticated. I mean, there's certain things that maybe you can go out and you can learn how to play a certain sport at a semi, like racquetball. Racquetball is a sport that if two beginners go out and they start playing, they can actually have a lot of fun playing racquetball. All right, but if they, but you play for a couple of years, you'll plateau out and it'll still be kind of fun, and you never really had to work super hard at it. But you get in there against a professional, it's not going to be fun anymore, right? Like jiu-jitsu is not one of those things where a lot of the beginning part is super fun. I mean, I think it is. I honestly think that it is because it's fascinating.
Right.
And
right.
Another thing that I would say, like as far as advice for people that are newer or starting out is, if you get tapped out with something, just ask your partner. Like, I don't know what happened, man. What just like. And, it can be frustrating depending on what type of training your instructor or your partner are looking for right then. That maybe they don't want to break down the whole move for you and show you step by step how you met your demise. But you can say, hey, what was that? And you say, oh, that was Ezekiel choke from Mount. Okay, thank you. And then
I just got Dan in that. I felt so good. It was the first time I ever got an Ezekiel choke, and I'm like, oh, this works against white belts. Because I tried it against Greg, who's like an advanced blue belt, and he was like, nah, it's not happening.
Yeah, that's a tough one. But yeah, so so it's like the person's like, what happened? Like I don't even know what happened, and or if that's how you feel, and they say, oh, this is Ezekiel choke, and you're like, okay, great, and then you take notes, and then you say, okay, if I'm in this position. And then you could say, maybe at an open mat, you ask an upper belt and say, hey, I got caught with this the other day. Is there anything I can do to avoid this?
Yes. Yeah. And that's the win. That's that for me right now, a little over a year or whatever, year and a half in white belt. Now I'm doing stuff and I don't train a lot. I mean, honestly, I'd like to train more. Maybe I'm in there twice a week if I'm lucky, but I'm now starting to do things where I know this is bad. Do this, and things are starting to become natural, so I don't have to think about them anymore. And that's that progression that I think if you have bad instructors who don't tell you, hey, keep that in there and get that motor, what is it called? Muscle memory in, you keep getting caught, you get frustrated, and then you're like no longer into jiu-jitsu anymore because you're like, I'm just not good at it. It's like, no, you're not repping the stuff
right.
enough.
Once you get the muscle memory for that, then you're getting caught with something else, but you'll develop the muscle memory defenses for those things.
And you get better and better, and that's why it's important to roll with different people too that
Absolutely.
Are good at different things.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you are, again, advice for sort of newer people is if you are asking questions like, how do I prevent this specific thing happening from this position? That's a good question to ask an upper belt.
Not when am I getting my blue belt? That's a bad question.
So that's a horrible question. Don't ever ask questions like that.
Especially to a Brazilian. Oh my gosh, you'll never get it.
It's like, well, let me just answer that for you. Whenever your next instructor decides to give you one, because you'll eventually be tired of training here and you'll quit.
Yep.
But what I was going to say is just like, the what can I do to get better? While it seems like a good question, it's a very that's like a.
Sorry about that.
Wow.
Sorry about that. It's a broad question. How do you? Sorry, everybody.
Are my ears bleeding?
Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's just a really broad question, and then and I feel like upper belts that actually care about your development are like they're actually going to be like, where, like, what are the area, like, because now they're trying to identify, like, okay, so they're not necessarily thinking about your specific mistakes that you made during the roll, but now they're trying to, they're playing back like, okay, so we rolled, we went through this position. You didn't really do a good job with the knee shield here. And then, yeah, you kind of rolled over too easy, didn't fight to recompose your guard there. And then this is their thought process. And then they're like, okay, well, at this point, like you didn't do this one thing exactly right. They're trying to sort of prioritize what was your biggest mistake that I remember. And it's just that, I don't say it's a lot of pressure, but you're asking for a lot of analysis.
A lot of analysis, yeah. And then most upper belts just like, you suck. You just suck. Keep training is what they'll say to you.
Yeah, no, and I did this one time. Like, so I was training, and my instructor at the time, so I just rolled. I was rolling hard for like 4 or 5 minutes. I don't remember if it's a round or it's like a sweep pass met. But then like after it was over, it's like the clock goes, and it's like we're taking a break, and I'm like, Coach, I was like, is there any like, where do you think I need to like focus my attention most? Like,
right.
What's a position that I should just, like what could I do to get better? And he's like, you just need to do more jujitsu.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like,
that's the answer.
And it's just kind of like, I was pissed off at the time, but I get it more now. Like it's, but at the same time, like you don't want to be, you don't want to be that coach necessarily where it's like, oh, you just need to be better at jujitsu. You need to do more jujitsu.